Welcome to the Weights and Plates podcast. My name is Robert Santana. I am your host, along with Trent Jones, my co-host.
Hello. Good morning.
Today, we're going to talk about, a rather boring topic for some, a rather important topic for others. We're going to talk about equipment and what you need to build muscle and get stronger.
Dude, what are you talking about, man? Equipment is exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Everybody loves gear.
For guys like us, we try to find excuses to blow money on it.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm hoping is that we record this episode and then you convince me that I need to buy another barbell.
My favorite was our colleague, the legendary Paul Horn, when he still had his gym in L.A. I remember he got fixated on the power blocks. Have you seen those?
Oh, no. Is that for doing board presses? Or
No, it's the dumbbells that it's just one little dumbbell and it can go up in weight, and just pull it out and put it back in.
Yeah,
it's
you dial it up and then you dial in the weight.
Kind of like that, but it's a square.
Yeah.
And then you set the weight you want and you pull it out and then those squares slide into each other. You have to look it up. But,
okay, yeah. I've seen the Bowflex version of that or whatever they have.
I was in LA 2 years ago now. This was before COVID. And, I hung out at the gym afterward. We lifted and we hung out and talked afterwards. And he's like, what about the power blocks? And I'm like, what the hell are those? Have you seen those, dude? They go from, 2.5 or 5 to 200. And he's like, they're $2,000. I need that. I need it.
And, that's probably cheaper than what you can buy a whole set of dumbbells for.
Oh, it is. A whole set of dumbbells from 0 to 200 with the half-pound increments from 0 to 50 included cost $15,000 pre-COVID. So probably 20 to 25 now.
Ooh, yeah, I believe it.
Those were the Rogue urethane ones that are round, not hex,
Yes, yeah, the globe style.
Oh, they're so nice.
That's I love. I think we all love. All good strength coaches love a great set of dumbbells, but that is the big problem, right? They are expensive and they take up a ton of space, and they're awesome. But that's a good segue. So that is outside of the reach of most home gym owners, myself included. Probably just don't have the space, even if I had the funds to buy a full set of dumbbells. So what we're going to talk about today is what you need, sort of the minimum equipment that you need to do real, effective strength training in your gym. And I think this is a good time of year to do it. There's a lot of people who are trying to get started up with a new program. You may have found strength training for the first time, and you're just now getting into what this whole idea of starting strength and how to program and lift like a real strength trainee for the first time. And that also means you're probably going to need some equipment that you're not familiar with and that you may not have. So we're going to help you out today. We're going to talk about what you need to do this right and also not spend a fortune and be able to do it in a reasonably small area. So let me start off before we get started. I have done this. I have put together a full setup in a 10 by 10 spare bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about I had a full power rack, 2 barbells, I had 650 pounds of plates, I had micro plates, I had the full deal platform, and I fit it all in the 10 by 10 bedroom. So if you have something that small even, you can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to equipment, I think the first thing you want to ask yourself is, what your goal is. And if your goal is to get stronger, any equipment you use needs to be incrementally loaded, which means you have to have the ability to make it heavier and heavier each week. You could play the set game all you want, but you can't do 100 sets a day eventually. Eventually it's going to take too much time to add more and more sets, and then it gets to a point where the weight gets lighter as the sets go up higher, and then your minimum intensity is not met. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what number your minimum intensity is, but there is a minimum. Weight has to be you have to have a certain amount of weight in relation to your max on the bar, machine, dumbbell, whatever implement you're using to make progress in terms of building muscle and getting stronger. So you can't do 100 sets and sit there and brag about your tonnage or your volume, because you've met your MRV, your maximum recoverable volume. You got to draw the line somewhere. Eventually it becomes a shitty endurance stimulus. And I say a shitty endurance stimulus because, even if you do 100 sets, you're still not going to match the number of strides in a 1 hour run,
Right.
So,
yeah.
so
you're basically not doing anything well at that point. You're not doing strength well. You're not doing endurance well.
No, you're just, fucking around with weights, and, that's not a good use of your time. So, this idea that weight training, strength training, weight training, whatever you want to call it, needs to feel like cardio is flawed because of that fact. You can't. It's not very good cardio if that's what you're doing. And number two, it's not a very good strength stimulus. So you're just moving weights around, getting very little out of it. You're not burning a lot of calories, and you're not really building muscle doing that. So you have to be able to incrementally load it. The barbell is the gold standard. Why is the barbell the gold standard? Because you can incrementally load a bar 1 or 2 pounds. And sure, you can do that with some machines too. You can leg press a whole bunch of weight. You can hack squat a whole bunch of weight. But it's not going to train the muscles of the back and waist the same way that a barbell will, because you're fixed in a position. When you're moving a barbell in space, you have to contract your abs, your obliques, and all the muscles of your back to stabilize the spine while you move. So you lose that even with a machine that allows you to incrementally load. That's what makes barbell training superior to machines. The next thing somebody's going to say is, well, what about dumbbells and kettlebells? Sure, yeah, you have to stabilize your spine when you're using dumbbells and kettlebells. There's aspects of using dumbbells and kettlebells and things like that are harder because you're only using one side of your body and you have to stabilize the rest of it. But what happens when a dumbbell gets too heavy? Let's say you use a loadable dumbbell, or you get the magnet weights that you can put on the end of a preloaded dumbbell or whatever.
Or power blocks.
Or power blocks.
Or power blocks.
that we need, by the way.
Right, yes.
Horn needed them. He needed them. I think he got them, but he didn't go up to 200. I think he just went to 2.5 to 100 or 5 to 100. I don't remember how they were.
Dang.
But he definitely didn't get the 200. But I remember seeing them. They're like, the next time I visited, I started cracking up. You needed those. He was like, I needed those. But what happens? Okay, so once you get to about 100-pound dumbbells, and and let's say that first of all, let's use an exercise like the deadlift. Okay, first of all, you can't drag that on your shins. Even with the lighter dumbbells, you have a greater moment arm between the dumbbell and the middle of your foot, the load in the middle of your foot. You can't get it as close. And even when you do try to get it close, it's awkward. It's not like a bar that sits flush on your legs. So it becomes a different movement. Sure, you could still train the hip extensors, the same way. You can move through that range of motion. It's not quite as efficient. But what becomes a problem is, it's not unusual for a man to get his deadlift up to 400 to 500 pounds. A woman 200 to 300 pounds. So are you going to use 150 pound, 200 pound, 250 pound dumbbells? And what do those look like? They're huge. Eventually, they get so big that they're awkward to manage. You might throw your back out taking them off the damn rack.
Yeah.
So they're not practical as a practical matter. They're not good for developing raw absolute strength, but they're useful and you can do stuff with them. They have dumbbells that can be loaded too, and you can micro load them, add half pound each side each time if you're doing presses. With presses, you can't go as low as they get bigger, so you lose range of motion there. So that's the problem with dumbbells. Kettlebells run into the same problem. They get too large. They become awkward, right? Different type of stimulus.
The other thing that I've noticed with dumbbells in particular is that, often when I use dumbbells, the way I use dumbbells with my trainees is to have them mostly they're doing presses with them. They're doing benches and overhead presses, but they're doing them for higher rep sets. So maybe 8s, 10s, 12s, but they're doing them as intermediate lifters. So that means that they've already gone through a long process of lifting with the barbell first and developing a big base of strength. And so one of the problems that they have to overcome when they first start using dumbbells is that because they are freely positioned in space, they're sitting in both of your hands and they can move independently, it takes a lot of conscious effort to control the dumbbell to execute good technique. And that's just not a good way to start a strength program. If you don't already have excellent technique with bench and press using a barbell, the odds of doing it right and doing it well with a heavy dumbbell are nil. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly.
So, and you really don't want a dumbbell that goes the wrong way and pulls your shoulder, in a bad direction, right? That can get bad in a hurry. Whereas with a barbell, your misses are going to be much, much, smaller. They're going to be much less impactful if you do miss. So you really need to develop your technique with a barbell first if you're going to do effective dumbbell training anyway. And then, of course, as you mentioned, they're super impractical.
I mean, now they have, as you were talking, I was looking this up to see if somebody's finally invented this. They have dumbbell weight bar holders. So if you want to bench out of a rack and not have to like kick it up off your quads, there's an option now. But then the question becomes, how do you get them on there when they're 200 pounds or 100 pounds, or even
right?
After 100 pounds, after about 80 pounds, they start to get harder and harder to manage. So it's like, okay, I like this idea of having them up there, but I'm going to need a second person to put them up there safely when they get heavy enough, But
exactly,
because you get to figure, okay, I have a 310-pound bench, so I'm probably going to get past the 100-pound dumbbells for a handful of reps if I actually want to go heavy with it, If I were to train them. So it's nice to have that, but it looks like I'm going to need a partner once I get past those hundreds if I want to place them on those racks safely.
Right. So the barbell solves all of these problems very neatly. You can, it's very ergonomic. I've had women as small as 4'11" and women as tall as 6'2" use the same barbell to lift weights. Same thing with men. I've coached men as short as 5'5" and men as tall as 6'6", and they can all use the exact same barbell and load it to where they are with their strength abilities at that moment. So that means, for smaller women, they might start with the empty bar on a lot of exercises and add 2.5 pounds at a time. And we can do that with a barbell very easily.
Oh, yeah.
By the same token, a guy who's 6'6" and giant, he might start with 225 pounds in the bar for his squat. That might be his first squat, his very first workout. And then he might be making 10, 15-pound jumps for a while on the squat. We can do that too on a barbell. It's trivial. It's super easy to load it as finely as you need to or as much as you need to. And, these bars can't be broken really either. It's like, you can put 1,000 pounds on them and they're not going to they're going to take it in stride.
Especially if you have a pretty decent bar,
Especially if you have a good bar. So the barbell really just solves all these problems. And by the way, if you are a smaller female and, some women cannot press the empty bar on their first workout or even their 10th workout, there are smaller barbells too that you can use. And they're really easy to get a hold of nowadays. You can buy 33-pound barbells. Your standard barbell is going to be 45 pounds. You can buy 33-pound dumbbells. You can even barbells. You can even buy 15-pound aluminum barbells now that can be loaded up to like 65 pounds. So as you're working towards, if you're in that position and you can't lift the empty bar over your head, then you can buy a small barbell that's relatively inexpensive and load it until you get to the point where you can press the empty standard size 45-pound barbell. So, I think the biggest thing with people is they're just scared of the barbell.
Oh, yeah.
It makes so much sense when you really look at the pros and cons of lifting a barbell versus just about anything else, that it really just comes down to people have a certain perception of what barbell lifting is, and it's scary because we tend to think of like big hairy men
with
lifting,
a million plates on each side.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
That's just not correct. It's just not correct. So, the general perception is that a barbell is for big, fat, hairy guys that are squatting and deadlifting, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 plates on each side, and that dumbbells and kettlebells are safer and that they're better and all this other shit, right? But, the barbell saves space. It's cheaper. You can lift it. It's the most ergonomic device in the weight room because you could load up several hundred pounds and pick it up right against your legs, over the middle of your foot, over your center of mass. And you can't really do that with other types of lifting equipment. So I think it's very useful for developing strength because it's very efficient. You can reduce injury provided you're doing everything correctly. Yes, it's very technical, but Try lifting a heavy dumbbell. That also becomes very technical. The thing is, most people don't let it get
Right.
heavy, So, basically say the barbell is the gold standard. If you have a barbell, plates, a power rack, and a bench, you probably have what you need. If you can get some sort of pulley attachment to do vertical pulling, like pull downs, that's useful because many people can't do pull-ups or chin-ups out the gate, need to develop that strength. So I've been really promoting that. There's a lot of cheaper options than getting a weight stacked pulley system that's several $1,000s. You can, get something that's, not quite as convenient, but gets the job done of letting you pull weight down from over your head.
Yeah.
So I think that those items are the bare minimum. And, it depends on what your budget is. I mean, you might not be able to afford to get yourself very strong in the near future. So I would just start with a barbell and some plates so that you could at least deadlift, maybe clean and press,
Yeah.
even if your clean's not the prettiest, just, make it good enough to get it up on your shoulders,
Exactly. So that's the main takeaway here is that the barbell, everything in your home gym, to get the most progress that you can, and to be able to do the most variety of exercises, you're going to need a barbell, and everything else that you buy in your gym is going to be built around that barbell. And so, yeah, let's talk about what kind of what we would recommend for someone getting that setup that you just described. So just to reiterate, you need a barbell. You're going to need some plates to put on the barbell. You're going to need a rack of some sort to put the barbell on, if you can. This would be for squats and presses and bench presses. The deadlift can be done from the floor. And you're going to need somewhere to put those plates, like some sort of stand or rack to put them on. And then this is optional, but highly recommended is you're going to need to build some sort of platform to put the weights on so you don't crack the floor.
I'm going to probably say that's not optional. You probably should get a platform because you're going to want to bolt this down. So, you're going to need a platform. You're going to need one. You could probably get away with it in the beginning. So, I can see where you're coming from, saying it's optional. But you're going to need it when the weight gets on there, and the weight's going to get on there faster than you think. If you get a stand, obviously you're not going to bolt that down, and a stand should be a temporary fix before you get something that's, a little bit better. You don't have the room of a big weightlifting gym to drop a squat behind you and you don't want to fuck up your bars anyway. So,
right.
You also want spotter arms.
Which you will do if you drop it.
And you want spotter arms. Don't be cheap on those. The power rack usually brings spotter arms that, go through the holes. But if you have a stand, you should buy the spotter arms separate so that you have spotter arms on your stand. You don't want to die during a bench press. Now, here's an optional piece of equipment that honestly I think should become mandatory if you get your bench press heavy enough, if you train it, is the adjustable monolift. Because it allows you to lift off your bench right over the start position. Typically, you have to lift the bar from behind your head, which can lead to shoulder tendonitis for some people. Actually, it's technically biceps tendonitis. It manifests near the shoulder, so proximal biceps tendonitis.
Yeah.
Adjustable monolift eliminates that because you could roll the bar up over your chest, push it straight up, and then the arms swing out of the way versus you having to do this awkward movement behind your head to get it over your chest. That can end up bugging your joints. So, that's something that you should put on your wish list early on and keep it in the back of your mind because it's one of the best things you can buy for a home setup when you're lifting by yourself. It also removes other humans from the equation. You will never need a spotter if you have a monolift and safeties.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I'm lucky I've got my wife is she's good at handoffs. She knows exactly how I like the handoffs.
Yeah. I've been bench pressing with an adjustable monolift for 2 years now. It's prohibited that anybody squat with it because you need to walk your fucking squats out. But
right.
We all love it. I have 2 of them now. A member made one for my starting strength rack on his machine shop. And it's great because I never have to involve anybody in my bench press. And I think meat should be run like that too. Spotter arms, 2 spotters, 1 on each side, and an adjustable monolift so the lifter can lift himself off without any effort.
Yep, I like it. So let's talk a little bit more about the rack really quick and, some basic, we're not going to go through the whole market of like stuff you could buy because there's a ton of racks out there. There's a lot of companies now that are offering basically different variations on tried and true designs. But I'll give you sort of what I think are some of the gold standards of racks, and you can go find the one that matches sort of, matches that, and fits your budget too. So I think the gold standard for a home gym is the Rogue R3 power rack. It's you can look it up on the Rogue's website. It's just simply called the Rogue R3. It's got 4 posts, which means that it's going to have pin and pipe safeties that basically go between the posts, and that's what he's talking about, the spotter arms. In this case, these are just like pipes that can be moved up and down the rack to accommodate whatever you're doing. If you're doing squats, you can set them a little higher. If you're doing bench, they're probably going to be a little bit lower. You can do rack pulls on them by setting them even lower, so the bar's, on your shins. All sorts of stuff you can do with them. And it's extremely sturdy. You could park a massive truck on top of it. It'd be fine. So it's going to handle whatever weight you're putting on there. And the coolest things about the R3 is that it's 2 things, two cool sort of extras that a lot of power racks don't have. The first is it has hole spacing in the middle of the rack that's 1 inch from center to center of the holes, which means that you can you're talking about taking your bar out of the rack on the bench press. Well, one of the problems you run into with racks that have, let's say, 2 or 3 inch hole spacing is one notch is way too high. The other, you can barely get it out of the pegs. The next notch down is way too low, and you have to do like a massive shrug to even get it out of the pins. It's just a huge pain. Well, with the 1 inch hole spacing, you can put the bar exactly where you want it for your arm length every time, which is, I think is great. A lot of racks don't have that, and they all should have it.
I agree.
The second thing I like about the R3, it's not unique to Rogue, but Rogue does a really good job with this, is that you can buy a ton of different attachments for whatever else you want to add down the road. So you're talking about those monolift, attachment. Rogue makes a monolift. If you want to do dips, you can buy a dip bar that attaches to the rack. The rack comes with a chin-up bar, but if you want like some sort of fancy other type of chin-up bar, you can get that. I mean, there's just like there's hundreds of different things you can attach to the rack. So I think that's great for a home gym because it's upgradable to infinity, and it's pretty much always going to meet your needs.
Yeah, I like the R3 Rogue rack. It's pretty good. Obviously, if you have a bigger budget to play with, the Monster series is a lot nicer. I like the bigger holes and the larger safeties, and it just seems sturdier. But I don't recommend that as a baseline. It's, if you want to spend some more money, get a nicer rack. The RM series is pretty good. If you want one that's deeper, you can get an R4 or an RM4. I don't like the light. I'm not thrilled about it, personally.
You mean the real but the budget series that they do?
Yeah, the one in the middle. It's coated like an R3, but then it's got the 3x3 uprights like a Monster.
Oh, I gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So there's the Monster series, then there's the Monster Light series,
and there's the Infinity,
there's the R series.
Yeah, the R series is the Infinity series, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you brought up a good point there. This is important. If you plan to train with a significant other or just other people in general, strongly consider the R4 over the R3. So one thing that you probably won't think about until you actually get the thing set up is that if you want to have 2 people lifting at the same time on a single rack, the problem you're going to run into is the diameter of the plates banging into each other when they're racked. So let's say you've got 2 people squatting in an R3, right? It's 36 inches from post to post. That's how deep it is. So it's fine. It seems like it's going to be fine. You can have one person outside the rack, one person inside the rack. But the problem you're going to run into is if both people have 45-pound plates on the bar, then as you back the bar out, as you take your squat out of the rack with a 45-pound plate and your buddy behind you has a 45-pound plate on his racked bar on the outside, they're going to hit each other and you're not going to have space. So if you want to do that, the R3 or the R4 is deep enough. It's like an extra foot deep. So it's enough to have somebody working on the outside, somebody working on the inside without running into that problem and having to strip the bar down for every set, which is you're not going to want to do. Now, that said, I actually have an R3 in my current home gym, but we're in a big garage, and I have enough space to basically center the rack on the platform that I have. So I have a standard 8-foot by 8-foot platform. We'll talk more about that in a second. And I have the R3 right in the middle of that platform. And my wife and I will work out together, but we lift on the outside of the rack. And what I've done is I've gotten 2 pairs of spotter arms that I can put outside the rack. And so you can do that together. She squats on one side, I squat on the other side. That's fine. You just can't have somebody squatting inside while another is squatting outside, unless you get the R4.
And
does that make sense?
Yeah. And even with that, if you get the R4, then you have to get 2 pairs of spotter arms because the tubing will go through the hole on the front of the rack. And if you're at the same height, you're not going to be able to put spotter arms on the side because the tubing will be inside the hole that the spotter arms would need to go into. So you just wouldn't be able to use the tubing to have spotter arms inside the rack, most likely, unless you have different holes. But even then, the spotter arms on the outside, the top part, the metal sheet on the top, would probably hit the pins if they're close. So,
yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point because those spotter arms, so you can go look up if you're not familiar with what a spotter arm looks like. You can get on the Rogue website and just look at it. It's different from the pin and pipe safeties because it has like the cross beam that attaches to the rack is quite long. It covers like 5 or 6 holes. And so whereas the tubing, that just covers one hole, like you just poke it through one hole. And so, yeah, they don't really work well together on the same rack. So that's just a consideration. If you plan on having multiple people working on the same rack, just think through all these little details because it's a little bit more complicated than it seems like at first blush. You don't have to get the R3 or R4 by Rogue, by the way. I only bring up Rogue because they're kind of the gold standard, in my opinion, in terms of quality, and they have all the features.
Yeah,
But if you're on a budget, there's other stuff out there.
Yeah, they make their stuff here, and they have a lot of options and a lot of stuff you can attach to them. It's pretty convenient, but there's other stuff out there. I have a starting strength rack at my gym. I like it, but I had to, buy some custom items to make it work. I had one of my members, a welder, made me some spotter arms to put on the outside because I like to squat outside the rack, and they don't make spotter arms for that. And then I had another member who went the distance and made me a monolift attachment, adjustable monolift that attaches to the starting strength rack, so I can have a monolift I can use now. It's real nice too. He did a really good job.
Nice, yeah.
But it just had to go through and do custom stuff, and I got lucky. They were members. The first guy, I didn't pay $90, I think, or $100 for the spotter arms because we were buddies. But it would probably cost you like 2 or 3 if you hired a welder, maybe more.
Right.
The amount of steel he used, because we dropped like 600 pounds on it to make sure it worked. And then the monolift, that thing would probably be $1,000 easily, that adjustable monolift. The way that guy made it, he just milled it down real good. He used his machine. He has a machine shop in his backyard. It's like a hobby of his. Yeah, he didn't charge me for that, which was nice of him. I would have paid him, but he's like, no, it's a gift to the gym. I'm like, great. So,
hey, that's
so
awesome.
Now I can do everything in the starting strength rack now. The thing is, I have a Brown Brothers original, so the holes are a little bit more spaced out than the starting strength rack you can buy today at Texas Strength Systems.
Okay. So you have the original Bobby Brown.
Johnny Brown rack. Yeah.
Or Johnny Brown.
Brothers
yeah.
Welding. That was the last one he ever made.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a little piece of history. Yeah. So that's he's referring to in the back of the starting strength book. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Was it the 3rd edition where Rip put that in?
I don't remember. It's been there for a while. He's had those racks for ages.
Yeah, so Rip, it didn't used to be you could easily get squat racks. I mean, you didn't have Rogue, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So basically Rip had some local fabricators build his racks that are in his gym in Wichita Falls, and that's the Brown Brothers rack.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, those are great. I've lifted on those at Wichita Falls many times. That's a great rack too. Titan makes a decent rack if you're on a budget. They basically copy everything Rogue does and then make it in Asia for cheaper. Mm. So it is what it is. But if you're really on a budget, you can get that. I have some clients that have bought a Rep Fitness rack.
I've seen those.
They seem to be pretty happy with it. It doesn't have all the nice hole spacing and that kind of stuff, but there's another option for you. I don't know. We could go down the whole list, but basically you can go look at the racks that are out there that are available to you, because we don't know at the time of this recording what is going to be available when you're looking. So that's going to be up to you to figure out what you can actually get your hands on. But take a look at that Rogue as just an idea of what kind of features you'll want, and you'll be pretty well set there. So we've mentioned the barbell a lot so far, but we haven't actually talked about barbell specifics. What do you usually recommend people get if they need their first barbell?
Well, don't get an Amazon.com $80 barbell, first of all. Typically, you want a power bar, ideally, or an all-purpose bar. Is another option. Rip is a huge fan of them. I don't like them. I prefer more aggressive knurling, which is the textured portion of the bar. It's called a knurling. And you have to consider that you're going to have to pick this bar up to deadlift it. And you want something that's going to stick to your hands real well. I don't like a soft knurl. Some guys do, that you figure it out as you lift.
Yeah.
So typically a good lifting bar, the reason I recommend a power bar is because most people aren't going to do cleans. I hate to say it, I wish more people would do cleans, but some people can't clean. And the amount of time necessary exceeds what the resources allow. So you don't need an Olympic weightlifting bar. So I guess let me back up. There's different types of bars. You have a power bar, which is a powerlifting bar, has markings that are 33 inches apart, which is the maximum legal distance you can grip the bar in a bench press, hence why it's a power bar. It's for powerlifting. Powerlifting includes a squat, bench press, and deadlift. The knurling's typically a bit more aggressive. The diameter of the bar itself is about 28 and a half to 29 millimeters, typically closer to 29. We have 7-inch sleeves on the end to put plates with 2-inch holes across them, right?
Yeah, so and the loadable length on the sleeve is usually a little bit more, I think.
It's longer than 7 feet.
Oh, no, it's 7 feet.
Yeah.
It's 7 feet. I'm just talking about the sleeve itself that you can put it on. It'll have And actually, I don't know. I think maybe you could load about the same amount, but the total bar length is 7 feet. Yeah. The other thing about the power bar is it's going to have a knurl in the center of the bar where you would put it on your back in a squat, and that's pretty important because the other types of bars that you'll run into, like the all-purpose bars and especially the weightlifting bars, like you might find at a CrossFit gym or an actual weightlifting gym, those generally do not have a center knurl. And that can be a real annoyance if you're trying to squat and it's just smooth in the part where you put it on your back.
Yeah.
If you have any trouble with keeping the bar racked on your back, which a lot of people do, especially guys that are, not very flexible, then having a nice sharp knurl that sticks to your shirt is really nice on the squat. So yeah, so that's another good reason for getting a power bar. But there are other bars out there, if that's not available to you, like the weightlifting bar. Generally it's going to look the same as a power bar, except for it's not going to have the center knurl, and it might have a slightly different sleeve on the outside for loading. And importantly, it's going to feel different in your hands and on your back when you have a decent amount of weight on there. A weightlifting bar that's designed for doing cleans, snatches, jerks, is going to have a pretty decent amount of flex and give to the bar that you really don't want on most of the lifts.
Right.
It's basically going to whip on you. And it's kind of hard. I mean, if you ever watched weightlifting, you can see it, right? When those guys rack a clean and they're sitting there in the clean position, in the rack position of a clean, you can see the bar just sitting there, or the weights just bouncing on the ends of the bar, right? It's just, that's the whip, right? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to time it such that when they go for the jerk, they time it so that the weights are rebounding upwards in time with the jerk, so that they're not moving against the whip of the bar.
So you get that momentum.
Yeah, you get a little extra momentum. That's great and all, but you can't really control that in a squat. And what'll happen if you try to lift with a weightlifting bar and you're squatting, anything over 315, maybe anything over 275, is that you'll hit the bottom of the hole and you'll try to drive up. And then if the bar's bouncing in the other direction, if it's going downwards while you're trying to drive up, it just throws your balance all off, and it's really annoying.
Yeah, with a weightlifting bar, it's different purpose. Weightlifting bars typically are either the same price as a power bar or slightly more expensive, depending on the brand. Rogue is offered a lot of cheaper alternatives than what bars used to cost. Typically, a good power bar was in the 600 to 800 range, and a good weightlifting bar was around $1,000. And a lot of that has come down over the years because there's more options now. So a power bar from Rogue, like the Ohio Power Bar, is about $300, depending on which one you pick. The other factor to consider is where you live. If you're in a humid environment, like if you live in the South or the Midwest and you have a lot of rain and humidity, you might want to get one that has a zinc oxide coating. It's usually another $25, and it's worth paying for because you're not going to get a bunch of rust. Down here in the Southwest, we can get away with a bare steel bar, and it's probably not going to rust. Although my bare steel Ohio Power Bar, one of the very first bars I bought when I was in LA, that one did rust in Los Angeles because there was enough humidity there to rust it out. So it's a little bit lower maintenance to pay that extra money for that zinc oxide coating, which gives you that black bar presentation. So consider that as well. Then too, if you are doing cleans and snatches, you're eventually going to want to have two bars. You don't really want to deadlift with a weightlifting bar. Weightlifters do it, but they don't max out their deadlift. You want a bar that's, got a nice diameter, that's stiff and that doesn't bend, so that you're getting all of the range of motion and not adding steps to the lift, like pulling a bunch of slack out of the bar that doesn't need to be there. But if you're going to be doing weightlifting movements, you typically want to get an Olympic weightlifting bar, not, the Bella bar if you're a female lifter, all these stupid specialty bars that, you can use it for everything. If you're going to get serious about weightlifting, you want to get an Olympic weightlifting bar. Like Trent said, the knurling is usually smooth, or there's usually a smooth center. There's no knurling in the middle, or a very soft one, like the expensive Eleiko bar. They got a soft knurling you can barely see in the middle. And I think that's just more to gauge where to place it. I don't know. I don't see the value in it, but they have it on
find
there.
The center of the bar.
Typically those are about 28 millimeters for males for men's weightlifting, and then 25 millimeters for female weightlifting for women's.
Yeah, it sounds about right. And it's a lighter weight too. The women's bar is
15 kilos.
Is going to be 15 kilos or roughly 33 pounds.
And the men's bar is it's 20 kilos, so 44 pounds. So it's worth the money. They've come down in price somewhat. I'm looking right now. The Rogue training bar, I believe, is a weightlifting bar. It's $360. I remember having to pay $500, and I'm pretty sure it's the same damn bar. Well, here's the Olympic weightlifting bar. The Bright Zinc is $560. I think the original one. What the heck? Which one was it? I don't even remember. Now there's one that's IWF approved. I mean, there's so many damn bars. IWF approved only. That's bullshit, by the way. That's if you're competing in an IWF.
It's a racket.
Yeah, it's a total racket. It's like, we'll put our stamp on it. And I guess I buy $540. It went down, then it went up. I guess it went down. It went up again. Everything's gone up this year. But at one point, I saw it was under $500. When I bought it, it was $525. So, everything's up. But no, a good weightlifting bar goes a long way. You have two options there. You have, you can get bushings, which are fine. Most bars have bushings that allow the sleeves to rotate, or you can go with needle bearings. They're these little long finger-like looking bearings that surround the perimeter of the shaft so that the sleeves can rotate more smoothly. Needle bearing bars tend to be more expensive. I have them in my gym because I find they're easier to teach the Olympic lifts with because it makes things a little more intuitive. You get a little more spin rotation on the bar, and that's what you want when you're catching a clean, jerk, or snatch. You want that rotation. You don't want that when you're doing strength lifting or power lifting. That's where a good power bar works, and that's why they've created all-purpose bars like the starting strength bar or the BNR bar. You can do both with it. There's Rip hates when I say this. I can still feel it when I use one, but there's a little more flex in the bar, and physics would dictate that because it's a 28.5 millimeter bar versus my Ohio bar or Eleiko bar. They're 29. I think the Eleiko is 29. We'll check that. But the diameter can influence how much the bar bends. Now it's not bending like a deadlift bar or even a weightlifting bar, but enough for a guy who's pulling on a power bar all the time to notice. So it's just my own OCD. A lot of people use the starting strength bar and love it. So you're probably not going to even know what the hell I'm talking about. So I'm not bashing the bar. It's just a personal preference thing. We get these little arguments.
Yeah.
Nick Dogadillo got really pissed at me for saying that it whipped. And I'm like, well, I'm used to using a friggin' power bar.
And I will say that, so the starting strength bar is, gosh, I don't know when they started making that
2019,
for starting
I think.
strength. 2019. So it's just out. It's only been out a couple years, but yeah, that's made by Buddy Caps in Irving, Texas. And I'm familiar with some of his other bars, they're all great. I really like the starting strength bar. But prior to that, generally in the starting strength realm, we would recommend the Rogue BNR 2.0 bar, which is another one of those kind of all-purpose bars. And I've spent a lot of time training in the Rogue the BNR 2.0 bar. So I'm very familiar with what it feels like, and I swear the starting strength bar, every time I use it, is whippier than the 2.0, or than the BNR, I mean. So yeah, take that for what you will. But yeah, those are great bars, and you can really this whole flex thing. Don't get too caught up in it. You're really not going to feel it until you get into the 400s on the deadlift. Probably.
Most likely not.
Yeah, you mean you'll feel it a tiny bit in the mid threes, let's say, but you're not going to feel a whole lot of flex, and it's not a huge step at all between that and a typical power bar if you are interested in competition where they might be using something like a Texas power bar or Ohio power bar or something. So it's pretty easy to do that. What you don't want to do is if you don't really have any aspirations to do the Olympic lifts, and maybe you might dabble with some power cleans or something. What you don't want to do is you just don't want to get a weightlifting bar at first, because that's going to be tough to do the main strength lifts on. So just get yourself a power bar, or get yourself one of these all-around bars like the starting strength bar, the BNR 2.0, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And for God's sakes, do not do what Santana was warning you against. Don't get the Amazon bar.
Please
I know
don't.
It says it's rated for 1,000 pounds, but that's a lie. That is a complete lie.
It's complete bullshit. They're garbage.
Yeah.
Globo gym bars are garbage too. That's why everything feels heavier when you go from LA Fitness to my gym.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, no, you need a good bar. Then plates. Let's talk about plates, because plates matter too. You have typically cast iron or bumper plates. Those are usually your options. Weightlifting meets use these plates they call discs. So they look like bumpers. I don't know. I never looked at what's inside of them. They're rubber coated, but they call them discs. You're not going to buy those. They're insanely expensive. I don't think any weightlifters are listening to me ramble, so you don't need to worry about those.
Yeah.
So we'll just kind of limit our discussion to, bumpers and cast iron. Then there's the holes. What were those plates called? Oh, it's in the book, and I can't remember. The ones with the 1-inch holes. We don't want you to buy those, but they're called something. What are they called?
Oh, yeah. I believe those are called standard plates.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think those are called standard plates, and then the 2-inch plates are called Olympic plates.
Standard plates have a 1-inch hole. You don't want to use those. Just because you found them in grandpa's, attic, collecting dust, and they were free. I mean, you're not going to go very far with that. What you want are Olympic plates. They have a 2-inch hole, and they come, and then we have what's called standard iron versus milled cast iron. I think they're both cast iron, but they're both iron, but the difference is you'll find some that are cast in a mold. And then they come out of the mold, and they just do a real quick grind, and then they paint them, and that's it. That's it. It weighs whatever it weighs coming out of that mold, and there's a pretty high percent tolerance in either direction of the stated weight on the plate. So if you pick up a cast 45-pound plate, for instance, it could weigh 41 pounds, it could weigh 47 pounds. Or you might get lucky and it weighs 45 pounds, like it says on the bar, but it can actually, it doesn't necessarily weigh exactly what it says on the label. Mm-hmm. But there are milled plates. They basically will grind it down. They take it out of the mold and they just grind it down until it's within a very tight spec of the stated weight. And that's usually like 2% is like the York Legacy plates. Mm-hmm. They used to guarantee like it's plus or minus 2% from whatever the stated weight is. Yep. And usually it's in practice, and the ones that I've weighed personally at various gyms have been tighter than that. I think they're tighter. They just can't claim they're calibrated.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then you have the other, that's a good point. You bring up, there is a third type of plate you'll run into, but these are crazy expensive, just like those Olympic plates, the weightlifting plates, discs. you will see powerlifting plates that are calibrated, which means they're like plus minus a few grams from the stated weight, which is completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's only there for competition, so don't worry about that. Unless you plan on hosting powerlifting meets, don't worry about it.
Yeah, you don't need calibrated plates.
My take on this, I'll see what you say. My take on this is milled plates sure are nice if you've got the money and you don't care, but they're completely unnecessary. Just go get some cast iron plates and weigh them. Spend an afternoon and weigh all of the plates on your bathroom scale or whatever. And then, if you've got any that are just way off spec, then mark them in some way so that and then just set those aside for for later. It's usually they're better than you think they are, and occasionally you just get unlucky and you'll get one or two that are just way off.
Standard iron isn't terrible. I used it when I first started lifting because that's what was available at most powerlifting gyms. They were typically 10 different brands though, and it was a problem. But what I didn't like about cheap standard iron was that the holes were a little bit on the big side typically, and it's just because of the way they're made. Yep. So they would tilt on the bar. You have all this tilting of the plates, and I really could not stand that. I don't see that as much with the milled plates. They tend to stand upright pretty fine. Have you noticed this with the cheap cast iron?
Yeah, that's a good point. So yeah, you're totally right. With the cheaper cast iron plates, they make the hole sizing a little bit bigger so it fits on any bar. But the problem is it's going to slosh around, especially on a deadlift when you've got, let's say, 4 plates stacked next to each other, side to side, and you're deadlifting 405. You might get it nice and tight on the first rep, and they're all stacked together nice, and then you pull it and you put it down, and the shock of the plates hitting the floor, because they don't fit tightly on the sleeve of the bar, they start to flop around, and then they're kind of wiggling and wobbling. It's just kind of annoying.
It's trade-off,
Yeah,
it's you're paying a little bit more for milled. It's not a ton more. Where you really start to see the price jump is when you go calibrated or Olympic weightlifting discs. Those tend to be really expensive. But I'd say milled is worth it. In my opinion, I really don't like standard iron for that number one reason alone. I don't like my plates flopping around on the damn bar. So that's just me.
Sure.
Then you got your rubber-coated urethane plates that the Globo gyms have. Don't get those. They're junk.
Oh, those are terrible.
Yeah, those are terrible. Don't get that.
Especially with the octagon or whatever they are.
Hex.
It's like the yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to get that shit. They're going to get all banged up too, dropping deadlifts, chipping the rubber off. And the iron gets exposed. Don't waste your money. Get yourself some. At the very least, get standard iron. If you're willing to spend the extra money, get the milled. I think it's worth it. So yeah, then we have fractional plates. This is what I mandate everybody buy when they start working with me. You have to buy this the first day. And you can find those on Amazon. I've been recommending Micro Gains, but there's other brands that they're maybe a little bit cheaper even, but that one's just simple, and I just send them to people. But fractional plates are smaller plates than 2.5 pounds, which are typically the smallest cast iron plate that'll come in a set of cast iron. And they come in 1 pound, half pound, 3/4 pound, and 1/4 pound. And some of you might be laughing if you haven't used these before, but believe me, when the press gets heavy, adding a couple pounds is normal. For some guys to do 1.5 pounds. Women, female lifters that I train, and they all go up by 1 pound on their bench press, and their press when it gets heavy. It's just what happens. And that's normal. That is the rule, not the exception. Just because you have been accustomed to seeing a 2.5 pound plate being the smallest plate in your commercial gym that you've also refused to use for most of your life because you're a big tough guy and pussies use 2.5 pound plates. This is a line of thinking in these gyms, by the way. I remember my cousin when I was like 10 years ago. He's like, "Oh, I started using the 2.5s recently," and I'm like, dude, that's still, it's 5 pounds,
Right.
So anyways,
just get them. Get them
right away.
Just go ahead and get them.
Get them right
that's
away.
Right. Get them now because you're going to need them sooner than you think. And if you wait, you're going to have to wait around, and then you're going to have to just screw around flatlined and plateaued with your press until you get them in. So, I totally agree.
You have to get those right away. Even if you're training at a commercial gym, you have to get those. You're going to add 2 to 2.5 pounds on your bench press and about 2 pounds on your press, maybe 1.5. That's going to happen. You are not the special genetic freak that is going to go up 5 pounds to a big giant press. You're going to get stuck at 110 and then complain that your upper body's not getting stronger and your squat's going up. Well, you're trying to go up as fast on your shoulders as you are on your legs and back. It doesn't work that way. Just look at it look at your line of reasoning there. My press should go up as fast as my squat. Do you realize how stupid that sounds? How ridiculous that sounds. I mean, and same with the bench press. Your bench press should go up as fast as your squat and deadlift. Think about that for a second, So, you might be able to make those jumps for a couple of weeks, sometimes, maybe a little bit longer, but you're going to be going up by about 2 pounds on the bench press and the press. So live with it. It's life. Yep. It's not going to go up as fast as your squat. So fractional plates you absolutely need. The other thing you absolutely have to buy right away are weightlifting shoes, Olympic weightlifting shoes, not cross trainers, not Metcons, not fucking Vibrams, not bare feet, or lifting in socks. I mean, you can do that on deadlift.
I have a confession.
You have some 5 fingers.
I was that guy. I don't have them anymore. I don't have any more. I threw those away a long time ago. But I was that guy for a while, lifting at the Globo Gym in 5 fingers.
Oh, Jesus.
I admit it. I was that guy. I was also a vegetarian at that time. It was dark days, my friend. Dark days.
I didn't want to spend the money on them. I considered them because I figured out that my running shoes were bullshit for squatting and doing all this other shit. And I wanted to be more stable when I was lifting, and I considered those. I didn't want to pay. But that said, we love to make fun of the Vibram 5 fingers, but Vibram soles are phenomenal if you are hiking and mountain climbing. They are great for that.
Yeah, they are good.
Not the 5 fingers, they're soles, because they make soles for other brands. A lot of brands use Vibram soles in their shoes if you're into mountaineering or hiking or climbing.
Yeah, exactly, like the Keens and stuff. But get shoes. People argue all the time on the internet about this. I occasionally get updates from the Starting Strength Facebook group. The main Starting Strength Facebook group, and there are some starting strength coaches who moderate that group. Bless them, by the way. But people argue with this like every 2 weeks. They're like, I pull in chucks. It's just fine. I pull in, It's like, we don't care. You're wrong. You are wrong. Just get weightlifting shoes. And when you're pulling 500 pounds or more, then you can make up your own mind as to what you want to pull them in. If you're pulling 650 and you're like, hey, listen, I want to pull barefoot. Okay, fine. Go for it. But if you're just starting out and you're pulling 135 or 225 or 365, then no, you have to wear shoes. Just learn how to set up correctly.
Yeah.
Just learn how to set up correctly and use them. The other thing about this is, as a practical thing, they're going to give you a lot of stability that no other shoe will, but they're also going to protect your foot. If you happen to have you're going to bang into stuff, you're going to bang into the rack, you might have a plate that kind of falls a little awkwardly on your foot. I don't mean dropping it from head height down on your foot. Nothing's going to help you there, but plates get knocked over or whatever from time to time. If you have a nice sturdy weightlifting shoe, it's not going to beat up your foot. If you're wearing these stupid chucks or barefoot, you're going to screw up your feet, you're going to bust your toe open, you're going to bleed on my platform, and I'm going to be pissed.
Don't make us
Do not bleed on my platform.
Don't make us clean this shit up. Seriously.
Yeah, come on.
I'll be fair to some folks.
And you should be pissed if you bleed on your platform.
Fuck yeah. It's not easy to clean, especially when it gets on the bar. It's a whole other story.
Yeah, right.
That's another thing I'm going to bring up next. But to be fair, once you start deadlifting after a while, you might not like the heel, and that's fine. And I pull in socks all the time. But the plates that are on the bar, how many feet away from my feet, But don't do that right off the bat. Try it in shoes. Go as far as you can.
Right. Yep.
And if you want to pull in socks, that's fine. But you shouldn't be squatting and pressing and benching in socks, You need shoes for that. And now for the squat and the press, you should be wearing your Olympic weightlifting shoes because they provide stability. They give you more mobility around the ankle. They're great for squats and presses because you are standing with a weight on your back and a weight in your hands in front of you. So the standing aspect makes them very valuable. Now, on a bench press, it's funny I just mentioned Vibram soles. I like wearing my boots. My boots have Vibram soles on them. But hiking boots are actually illegal in USA Powerlifting. I don't know about other federations, but they're illegal in USA Powerlifting. Yeah. They're illegal in IPF. Fortunately, I don't compete in powerlifting, so I don't give a fuck. I'm still gonna, I bench in my hiking boots, and it's not cheating. That's silly. Just like a bar grip shirt is not cheating. That's another item that, I recommend if you have a slick bench, or if you're using the wooden bench. I think it's great, But I like the bar grip shirts. I've tried them out. It's not cheating. I think that's silly. I think it's silly that those two items are banned, but they are. But I like a different type of shoe when I'm bench pressing. I don't like a weightlifting shoe when I'm bench pressing. A lot of people use a weightlifting shoe when they bench press because, they don't want to change shoes. But I prefer something with traction, like a running shoe, a trail running shoe, or a hiking boot, because I feel more grip on the floor. I feel more contact with my feet, and I can engage my quads more when I'm lying down on a bench. When you deadlift, it's a matter of personal preference. You do not want a running shoe or a hiking shoe or a trail running shoe when you're deadlifting. You want something that's stable. Stability is still the key there. You're standing, but now you're picking a bar up off the floor. The complaint with the weightlifting shoes is that it pitches people forward when it gets heavy. If that's a problem for you, then try it in flats. I have a deadlift shoe. The problem is I have a wide foot, so it's a pain in the ass to put on, and I don't want to deal with it half the time, so I just deadlift in socks. Now they have deadlift slippers. The A7s are real nice. They're a little bit more expensive than the traditional ones, but when I was in the traditional ones, my feet were sliding around in them, so I don't like them. I want something that's snug, but not too tight. I hate Chucks. I hate them across the board. I tried to use them to deadlift. I hated them. My feet move around in them. Not an option.
Yeah, the canvas, topper or upper, whatever you call it on the shoe. I don't know my shoe terminology. Sorry,
they're moccasins.
It's terrible. Your foot slides around, and frankly, the soles on those are not as stiff as you think they are. Like they flex plenty. It's just
what did I like?
Good.
I had the metal deadlift shoe, which is nice, just too narrow. A lot of my clients have the Sabos. They're a little bit cheaper than the metals, and apparently I've heard good things about those. Then there's the slippers, so you need shoes. Then,
and I will say this, I've coached a lot of people on the deadlift, and I have run into 2 people out of all of the hundreds and thousands of people I've coached that actually legit needed to pull with a zero heel or basically a totally flat sole from the get-go. Okay, 2 people that actually needed it. Every other person could pull just fine in shoes, right? Now, I'm not talking about personal preference, but they could do it, right? There's 2 people that didn't, and one of them is my wife. Just has really weird anthropometry on the deadlift. If she wears shoes with any sort of heel, it puts her hips above her shoulders. It's just an impossible place to deadlift. So, but that's, and I met there's one other lady that I coached that I had to do that with too. But that's it. So you're not a special snowflake. Just get some shoes.
No,
You'll still use them. Even if you decide not to use them on certain lifts later on, you'll still use them for years. Also, people complain about the cost on these. You may not realize this isn't a pair of running shoes. This is a pair of shoes that will last you at least 5 years.
And running shoes can cost as much as these if you start shopping them.
Oh yeah,
I think I have
absolutely.
I had a pair of $180 running shoes.
Oh sure, absolutely. So I usually tell people if you just need if you're budget conscious but you want a solid weightlifting shoe, get the Rogue Do Win.
Same here.
It's just rock solid, man. They are $100 all day long, every day. I think occasionally they go a little bit cheaper than that when they go on sale, but you can always get them for $100.
I like the classic because I don't like the plastic heel. I like the classic with the stacked leather, personally.
Yeah. So they make a slightly more expensive, I think they're $130. They make a slightly more expensive version of the Do Win called the Classic, which it looks nice. It looks very classy. But you've got some other options. I personally lift in Nike Romaleos. I've got the Romaleos 2, which are several years old now, but they're still going strong. I don't know what they're on now. The 4, I think. But those 4. are really solid. Adidas makes the same thing. They call them Addy Powers. Those are their nice, weightlifting shoe. And then there are some slightly cheaper options.
Powerlift.
Just get
the Do Win. It's reliable.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of money on shoes when I first started doing this, just trying them all out. I started with the Addy Powers, and I don't know. At some point, I thought they were. I didn't like them. I thought the heel was too steep. So I tried the Romaleos, and then I sold them to my cousin immediately because I felt even steeper on those.
Yeah.
Then what else did I try? I think I tried the Power Lift 1.0s, which weren't bad. I just didn't like the foam or the whatever cheap heel that they moved to. And then I found out about the Asics 727 Tigers. They've been making them the same way for 50 years now. And the problem is you can only get them in Japan, so I have to buy them through a third party and pay more money. So I ended up paying $275 for those back in 2015. And then if you try to buy them now from that same reseller, he's charging $330, and he told me that it had to do with the conversion to the dollar or whatever. So I've since learned that you can buy them on eBay and sites like that for lower 200s, but they're more expensive because they're limited quantity. They only sell them in the Japanese market, and they only go up to what's equivalent to a size 10, 10 and a half, I think. Apparently, if you wanted to get a bigger size, you have to be able to order them in Japan, and they go up to like $600 for a custom order, which is crazy. But the only thing I don't like about them is that the heel's not wedged. There's a gap between the front of the shoe and the back of the shoe. So there's like a gap between the heel and the forefoot.
Interesting.
Some shoe they used to make shoes like that back in the day. Rips, like you're gonna mess up your foot. I mean, knock on wood, that still hasn't happened yet. But I wish that it was.
Yeah. So is it more flexible as a result?
I could certainly feel. I could feel some of that. If you use that word, definitely could feel some of that. I love it because I could feel the middle of my foot much better than these newer type shoes. It's just me. So I've worn them for years.
Yeah.
I probably will get a new pair soon because I've let them sit in my car when I had a Prius and the Arizona sun, so they faded out. They're all fucked up. I didn't take good care of them. But, I might get another pair soon here.
I could see if you're like a split snatcher, that might be nice to have a little bit more flexibility in the sole, but still have the solid heel.
And that might have been the argument for that design, Personally.
Interesting.
Yeah. I love them. I fell in love with them right away. They fixed a lot of my form. I had a couple other clients that, forked up the cash and bought them and reported the same thing. Their technique improved immediately. So they're good shoes. I think everybody's experience in a pair of shoes is different. So for some people, these are good shoes. They're just very expensive, and I don't recommend them to newbies because you may not stick with this long enough to justify it. Like I just said, I'm getting ready to buy another pair, but I wouldn't have to if I'd taken better care of them. This is, shame on me. I deserve to fucking pay twice, but I'm probably going to try and shop them this time and see if I can get them for less than $300. And hopefully I won't have to replace them again. I get really jealous when my buddy James comes into the gym and he has his, and they're all like, they look brand new, and we bought them at the same time. They're suede, so the suede, faded out with the sun, so they're really like light blue. And then I think I've walked outside in the parking lot to take calls before, so like the heel's all chipped up,
Right.
They still work just fine, but I'm gonna probably replace them and keep the old ones laying around. But yeah, so that's shoes. Then I mentioned bar grip shirts. So A7 makes these shirts called bar grip shirts. They have a grip on the back, this rubber coating on the back of the t-shirt for when it was originally designed for squats. I don't really need it for squats, but some guys struggle keeping the bar from rolling on their back, and this might help.
Yep.
For me, I love it on bench, and I even love it more if you're using the starting strength bench, which is a wooden bench, because problem with a wooden bench is, the pro is that it's non-compressible, so you have a stable surface that you're setting up on. The con is that because it's wood, you slide, right? Or you have a tendency to slide.
Right.
Now, if you're wearing a bar grip shirt, you're not sliding anywhere, so now you're getting the best of both worlds, right? You're glued to the bench, and then you have a non-compressible surface that you're forming your arch on. I wish it was a little wider, personally, so I don't use the wood bench that much. If I can, maybe get a 4x10 or a 4x8 piece of wood and replicate it that way so I have a little more surface area for my shoulders, I might revisit that. But either way, you don't need a bar grip shirt. I like it because it reduces sliding, but it's another nice little item, kind of like the adjustable monolift. I think anybody who's going to run their bench up and max out in their garage and do several hundred pounds should probably get an adjustable monolift for self-assisted lift off.
Yeah, for sure.
It's one of those things that you should eventually buy at some point. And after using it myself, I'll never go back, I
got to get one now. I've used one.
You should have one, Trent.
A couple of times.
You should definitely have one.
Yeah, like I said, I'm pretty lucky. My wife does a good job. I get the same handoff just about every time, and I know that we communicate well in that. But yeah, it's still not the same.
It's still
thing.
better. You remove humans.
Yeah, for sure. Those bar grip shirts are great, especially if you're one of these people that has a very kyphotic upper back, and you're just naturally very hunched over. I'm sorry, nothing's going to change that.
No.
So, some people just need a little extra help keeping that bar from sliding around. So that's great.
We didn't talk about benches. We skipped over benches. I just realized that when I was talking about the bar grip shirt.
Yeah, so let's round out kind of the equipment side besides the personal equipment. I think that I'll say one thing. I think in terms of personal equipment for lifting, the shoes are the only must-have,
And the fractional plates.
And the fractional plates. That's right. Yeah, and the fractional plates. Now, I highly recommend a weightlifting belt as well, but you don't need one. You don't strictly need one. But we're going to get to that in just a second. Let's kind of round out the sort of the big equipment side of the picture, though. Okay, so you got to have a barbell. We told you some stuff you can look for there. You need a rack. You need plates. You need a couple of other things, though. You're going to need a bench for doing the bench press, and you're going to need a platform to put all this stuff on top of. So let's kind of hit those, and we'll get to the rest of the personal equipment that that might be a little bit more optional. So I'm not really. I haven't tried a whole lot of benches. I just have the Rogue flat bench.
Same here.
And
Same here.
I've lifted on at Rip's gym in Wichita Falls. He's got some I don't even know what they are. I think they're custom made. There's just these steel benches that have padding and like car upholstery.
Oh, I love that
on them. And I've benched on those. Those are great, but I don't really have a lot of experience with other benches. So,
I like the Rogue bench. It's affordable. It's good. You want something that's reasonably wide, but not too wide. I don't like the fat pad personally. There's guys that just love it. There's a bench called the Fat Pad that Rogue sells, and it's really wide and it covers my entire back. And I don't like it. I like to have a little bit of overhang on the edge, but not a lot. So that's the problem. So I like the starting strength bench and the idea of it because it's non-compressible. And when I was real skinny, it was great. Then I started gaining weight and putting muscle on, and then my shoulders got wider, and then I started hanging off the edge. Now, Rip has some guys much bigger than me benching on that. Chase Lindley's one of them because I believe they have wooden benches at the franchises as well. So, I'm sure that maybe I need to just ride it out. I don't know because there are guys much bigger than me that use them. But I noticed that when I went from skinny to not skinny, I started hating it. So I'd like a little bit more with it, but I think the Rogue bench is probably just fine.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
And you don't need the incline and decline. That's like $500 and $900. You don't need to do that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the major point here is that you don't need the adjustable bench. Yeah, just get a flat bench because if down the road, if you do really want to include some like incline benches. First of all, there's some ways to do sort of a ghetto incline bench with just your flat bench. You can use another barbell to prop it up. You can prop it up on a heavy box that can be loaded, and it ain't perfect, but it'll get the job done. And adjustable benches, they're just too expensive, and they don't have the same good, consistent feel on the bench when you're just trying to do the regular bench press that a flat bench does. So, a lot of people I know have recommended the Rep Fitness bench. I don't have any personal experience with it, so I can't tell you about it. I just know that there's other coaches who I've heard say they really like that one.
No, just need a simple flat utility bench. That's what the Rogue one's called, and it's sufficient. You don't need the adjustments. By the time you need the adjustments, you've decided that you're bored and you want to do some bullshit, and you can go spend money on that. Those adjustments are luxuries. You don't have to do decline. You don't have to do incline. At that point, you want to bro out. Some people buy dumbbells. You don't need those either.
or power blocks.
So power blocks. Well, you need those. We all need those. Up to 200 pounds.
I'm sorry.
Up to 200 pounds.
Of course. That's a need.
Especially up to 200 pounds. I got to really emphasize that. $2,000.
Yes.
I wonder what they cost now. I'll look them up later. But so what we cover? We covered squat rack, covered bar, plates, and a bench. That's what you need. Typically, a good setup for a male lifter planning to pull 315 or 405 is probably going to cost around $2,500 to $3,000. I don't know what the hell all this equipment costs now, but back in the day, you can get enough plates and weight and get enough plates, a rack, a bar, and a bench to do that. Then you need a stand for the plates. You don't need to get that right away. I've had people that just set them aside in the beginning, and then bought the accessories later. So weight,
sure,
a weight. A plate stand.
Like a tree of some kind. Plate tree.
I got mine custom. So I reached out to Texas Strength Systems, and this was a really good good investment on my part. I'm glad I did it. My gym has all of these trees now. So Ripeto's starting strength plate tree is great in terms of the design because it has 1-inch pegs. And 1-inch pegs are great because you can just pull the plates right off. When you have a 2-inch peg, you can only pull the last plate right off. So you have to fill like 5 or 6 plates on each side. I think it's actually more like 4 or 5 on a traditional tree because it's usually a shorter peg too. And then you pull the first one off. You might pull the second one off. Then it gets caught in the peg, and you have to like bend over and use 2 arms. With the 1-inch peg, you could pull it off with one hand from the very back. So you could pull the very last plate off, slide it right off. I love it. So I called up the welder. His name's Wes over at Texas Strength Systems, and I'm like, can you make a taller one with a third peg on one side? Because Rip's version has 2 pegs on each side, and then a center peg at the bottom, I think. I want to say,
right.
yeah.
Yep.
And then it has the starting strength branding. So he compromised another center peg further up to put his branding there. And I talked to him about it because the older ones at his gym have 2. So he's like, just call Wes and see if he'll make what you want. So I had him make what I want. So he added some height to it, made it taller, and he put 3 pegs on one side and 2 pegs on the other side. And then 2 pegs at the bottom, 1 peg at the top. In retrospect, I didn't really need 2 pegs at the bottom. That was, I'm like, I'll put the 1.25s on one and the fractionals on the other. Well, there's just a mess of plates down there. I need to make something else for the fractionals. But it was an experiment. But, for the average person, 1 peg at the top, 1 peg at the bottom, and then 3 and 2. Why 3 and 2? Because on the side that has 3, you're going to put a 5, a 10, and then the 45s at the bottom. And then the side that has 2, you're going to do the 25s and the 45s. And the center peg is where you're going to place the fractional plates, right? Or the 1.25s. And then the other peg is where you'll put your 2.5s, right? And I think I paid around $200 for that. And, I bought...
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I bought, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them for the gym. I think I would love to... I think I'd like to buy one more for the leg press. Actually, no, the leg press has plate storage on. I forgot. I finally bolted down the leg press and attached the plate storage. So, no, we don't need that anymore. So, I actually don't need another one. But, you could get something cheap and, on Amazon and get by for a while, but I highly recommend trying to go the route I went. I think he'll still make it for you. It's not that hard. You have to pay a little bit more for the extra height and the extra bar for the peg, but you're looking at about a couple $100, and I think it's worth it. It'll last a lifetime. It's well done. If you know a welder that can do it, you can reach out and I can give you the specs as well. I don't have them in front of me, but yeah, that's the other thing. You'll need an accessory to hold that because it'll get old leaning plates against the wall and picking them up off the floor. So you'll plan on getting that. Other than that, though, you don't really need anything else. A platform. Did we talk about platforms?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, we did talk about that.
Well, we need to talk about platforms.
Yeah, we said we can bolt it down or we can get a platform to place the rack on or not. And I recommended, I think you should. Typically, this depends on space. So ideally, you want to get an 8x8 platform, and I'll explain why that dimension in a second, with either 2 layers of 3/4 inch 4x8 plywood or 3 layers, 2 layers or 3 layers. Some guys use 2, some guys use 3. I like 3. I like the extra height, and I have the room. My girlfriend has 3. She has the extra height in her garage. She has the room. Some people don't have that height in some of these older buildings, so you might only be able to use 2, but at least 2 is the minimum. And when you're making an 8x8, you're going to cross these sheets of plywood. You'll put 2 side to side, then you'll cross them with 2 more side to side, and then you might cross them with 2 more if you do 3. Then you bolt it down with, I use deck screws to do that. And then on the top, I'll get some horse stall mats. Now, this is where it gets tricky, and you might have to do some cutting. This is the part everybody hates, cutting the damn mats. I went a little more expensive way, and I got some specialty 4x8 rubber mats and just put both on top and called it a day.
There you go.
Now you have to pay double for those typically. 4x6. I don't know what rubber costs now. That's probably high too, but in 2019, pre-COVID, I paid, I think, $40 for a 4x6 rubber mat. Then I found out about the 4x8s, and those were, because I had to get them shipped and all this other bullshit. I think I paid like $75 or $100 for the 4x8. And I only bought that for the one rack in my gym. I just had I had 3 layers of plywood, and they had like a T shape, so there was a little square inside the rack, and then a long plywood stack outside the rack, and I threw the 4x8 rubber on top. So, because
Okay,
I didn't
yeah.
want seams on my starting strength rack. I'm like, this is this. I
Yes,
have that
yeah.
rack in the middle of all the racks, and then I have
That's the
and, like
rack.
all the other racks have a 4x6 mat, then what is it, a 2x4 piece of rubber at the end, so you'll see the seam. But that one doesn't have a seam.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mine is the typical. Yeah, you basically take. So there's a lot of ways to finish out the top layer of the platform, and it really doesn't matter to a whole lot. I prefer to have a piece of wood on the middle. That's just my personal preference.
Yeah.
So I got a nice top sheet of hardwood. You can just use whatever. You can use OSB if you want to for the bottom sheets of plywood. But I got a nice hardwood. I think it's oak. You could use maple. That'd be a good one too. For the very top sheet, and I have that centered in the middle. And then on the sides of it, you've got a 2-foot kind of stripe on either side of it. And that's where I put the rubber mats. But yeah, I had to use 2 4x6 rubber mats that you then cut in half, lengthways. And then you have a little square remainder on the ends.
I was not going to do that shit. I got lucky. My neighbor at the gym was he makes furniture, so he has a wood shop, and I used his fucking table saw to cut all those mats.
Oh, look at that. Yeah,
I used
perfect.
a panel saw. That's what it was, a panel saw.
Panel saw? Oh, nice. Yeah. See, I did it with like an X-Acto knife. And
fuck that.
patience.
I did one like that, and I was like, hey, guy.
It
I
sucks.
went next door. I'm like, how much would you charge me to use your guys? And he's like, just pay for their hourly. And then I'm like, all right, no problem. I think it was like 20 or $25 an hour. And they got it done in an hour. I think 7 platforms. 2 of them were full-size Olympic. Those were more tricky because I put the wood sheet in the center and the rubber on the sides. But because they were all 4x6 mats, I didn't have anything that was 8 feet long. So they had to cut little weird fucking shapes to get those side rubber panels around the wood in the center. Back to why I said 8x8. So 8x8, you could bolt down your power rack on top of the platform. That's the whole idea there. Yeah,
yes.
Then you have to do some cutting. So my friend Audrey did this in L.A., or she's in Orange County now, so she has a garage gym, and she had to cut squares around the uprights to bolt that down into the area that she wanted to dedicate for the rack. So that's the nice thing, since you're not since most people have a tension slab garage these days. I know that not everybody does, but they're super common in construction. You can't bolt down your garage concrete. So you want to check for that for sure. If you're putting this in your garage, see if you have a tension slab. Usually it's written somewhere. I've seen that like engraved into the garage at some places.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But if you have a tension slab, you're going to hit that rebarb if you try to anchor it down. So you don't want to do that. If you don't have a tension slab garage, you can anchor it down just fine. You just need to get a roto drill and a long enough bit. Typically those slabs are about, I think, 3 inches deep. I think 4 is more rare, but I found that out with mine. My gym, it was built in 1973, the building I'm renting, and I used a 4-inch drill bit, and I drilled down into the concrete, and then I broke through the slab. No big deal though. So so I did that. Then you got to get concrete anchors, which are, for those of you who don't know these terms, they look like a big giant screw that are very heavily threaded, so that it anchors literally the whatever you're bolting down into the concrete. And then you just put that in with an impact wrench. And an impact wrench looks like a drill that you put sockets on, essentially, but it has a lot of torque, so it can go through the concrete just fine. Wired tends to be better than battery-powered. I've done it both ways. The battery-powered one that I used had 1,200 foot-pounds of torque. It was a DeWalt battery-powered impact, but I was constantly changing the batteries.
Just burning that thing out.
My buddy who does construction, he started training at my gym last year, and then a few weeks ago before Christmas, I'm like, hey, dude, let's bolt down this leg press. Do you have an impact wrench? And he's like, yeah, I got one that plugs in. He plugs it in. It just goes down, 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 down. We were done quick, so.
There you go.
Yeah, that's how you would do that. But if you have a tension slab driveway in your garage, then you definitely don't want to be bolting down to that.
Yeah, and you might run into, if in some parts of the world, you might run into a pretty heavy slope in your garage. So I live in East Tennessee. We get a ton of rain here, and we have, it's possible for your house to flood, especially your basement. So most garages around here have a pretty steep slope towards the garage door in case water gets in.
And they do that here too, which is silly, but it's just,
right. So if you look at my platform, I took my platform when we moved. I took it apart because I used screws to screw all the pieces of plywood together, and I screwed the mats onto the plywood. I didn't use any glue on it because I knew that someday I was going to move and I wanted to be able to take it apart. If you glue it, you're kind of screwed there. And so I took the whole thing apart and I moved it with all of our stuff when we moved out here to Tennessee and put it back together. And I realized that I've had a massive slope in my garage. So I had to shim one end of it up 2.5 inches. It's pretty
Wow,
big
that's
shim.
pretty big shim.
And it works great. And we won't go into like how to shim
Yeah.
your platform. There's that's beside
Yeah.
the point. But the other way you can do this, if you don't want to bolt something down into concrete, is you can get lag screws. And if you have a Rogue style platform, a Rogue style rack that has 3 or 4 screw holes in the bottom on the feet, then you can just take a lag screw, drill down into the platform, and then drill that, and then screw that lag screw in, and that does a pretty good job. So it's basically the rack is anchored only to the platform; it's not anchored to the floor. But the platform is so heavy, especially with 3 sheets of plywood on it, and man, that thing's just not going anywhere.
No,
it's really
freaking
stable.
heavy, man. So yeah, I think that covers the heavy equipment you need. So that's basically you need a rack, a bench, plate, barbell, platform, rubber, and then eventually a plate tree. That's your major pieces of equipment. And then as you do this for a while, if you get strong enough to get scared of the weight, well, I shouldn't even say that because people get scared of weight that's not heavy all the time. But if you get strong enough to where you've been doing this for about a year and you still want to keep getting stronger, and your bench press is, well over body weight, you should get an adjustable monolift next, and then maybe a bar grip shirt and, things like that, definitely. And then a weight belt. If you're squatting over double body weight, you might want to get a weight belt. I'm still a fan of Best Belts because it's still run by 2 people, and he puts a lot of passion into that damn belt. You have to wait a couple months for it. It's worth the wait. That's why I tell my novices, I'm like, just get it right away because by the time you need it, it'll be coming in the mail, I've had my Best Belt since 2013.
That's great. I want a Best Belt. My belt that I have is fine. It's, I've used it for years, but I still need to get a Best Belt. I just need to go order one. I really like him too.
Just do it today, man.
Yeah, I'm going to do it when we log off.
He's
here.
not a young
Let's
man
go ahead and
anymore.
order that. Right? Yeah, that's true. So so to be clear, with a weightlifting belt, I highly recommend that all of my clients get one. But I do recognize that there are people who have never lifted with a weightlifting belt and they do just fine. So it's, you don't strictly need one, but I put this in the category of like, it's almost as important as shoes because most people are going to benefit from having that belt.
Oh yeah.
And it's another one of those things where it's like, it's all right, look, you're going to spend $100 to $150 somewhere in that range. And it's going to last, it's going to last more than 5 years. It's going to last your entire lifting career.
Oh yeah.
Right? It'll last forever. You'll be able to give it to your grandkids if you really want to. So just go ahead and get the belt. It's cheap. The thing is, like, all this stuff is a big upfront expense. And I recognize that's a barrier for some people, but all of this stuff is stuff that if you just take care of it just a little bit, it's going to last for a long time.
Decades.
And there's not much stuff. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about, in 30 years, that $300 barbell that you spent money on that you were like, I don't know, in 30 years, it's still going to be a great barbell, There's not many things that you can buy nowadays where you can say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, get yourself a belt. Best Belts is great. Dominion Belts is really popular, and those guys are good. They, I don't know about nowadays, but Dominion has always been popular because they make a great belt. It's very high quality, but they also they tend to ship out really fast.
Yeah.
It used to be they would ship out within 2 weeks, on the dot. And most belt places you're going to take a couple months.
Yeah.
There's small operations, or they just are slammed with demand. So that's a good one. I have a Pioneer belt, which is fine. It does the job. It's not my favorite, but it's fine, and I'm so used to it. I just have stayed with it because it's what I know.
Dude, you'll love the prime cut.
But that's great. The only thing that Pioneer does really here's what I don't like about it. It doesn't have center stitching.
Mm-hmm.
So the belts, if you look at a weightlifting belt, you've got stitches in the outside and you've got a stitch down the middle, typically, of the belt. And the Pioneer belts, they don't. They only have stitching on the outside. not a huge deal, but it's a little bit more flexible than a good Best belt or Dominion belt. But they have one cool thing. There's one killer feature now, and mine is not like this, but you can get one now called the Pioneer Cut. Have you seen this?
No, I haven't.
So, okay, so this is pretty cool. So the Pioneer Cut, instead of having holes that are straight across the belt, they have 2 rows of holes.
Oh, geez.
So you've got one row and they're all 1 inch on center, right? So you've got one row of holes that's 1 inch on center, and then just underneath it, you've got another row of holes that are 1 inch on center.
2-prong?
And they're, nope, 1 prong, but they're slightly staggered, so you get 1/2 inch hole spacing effectively. So if you really some guys like to use the squat, for the squat, they'll set their belt a little bit tighter than the deadlift. It's pretty nice because you can get it's not a lot looser, it's just a little bit looser. Whatever. I mean, this is really just nerd stuff, but it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool, but just get a belt. Get a belt. The only thing you don't want with a belt is you don't want one of those bodybuilder belts.
Oh yeah,
that's really
tapered.
Wide in the back and thin in the front. Yeah, it's not really helpful.
I hate the taper.
You want one that's
what's your name on it?
This right
Marker, Sharpie.
Just get one that's straight across, 3 inch, 4 inch. It doesn't matter as much as you think it does. People argue about this, but I'm not a super long-waisted guy, and I use a 4-inch belt. It's fine. If you're super short-waisted, get a 3-inch belt.
Yep. I use a 4-inch. I'm a long-waisted guy. I like 13 millimeter belts so Best has their athlete and their prime cut. Their athlete's 10 millimeters. Most people do just fine with that. For me, I think it's too flexible. I prefer the 13 millimeter prime cut. In his description, he says that is reserved for guys squatting over 500. I don't buy that. I have plenty of all my female lifters use it. Everybody loves it. It's real stiff.
It'd be great if he made you send a video. It's I don't know, I can't sell this to you until I see some proof here.
I like it, but I guess some people don't like that stiffness, so it's a preference thing. I don't think it's as stiff as these powerlifting belts, like the Enzer. I think is really stiff. Apparently, it's not quite that bad, but it's got enough. It's just got just the right amount of stiffness, and I like it a lot. It's called the Prime Cut, and I like single prong. And the reason I like single prong is because double prong, you're going to have a situation where one goes in, the other one doesn't. It doesn't slide on like a glove, in my opinion. So I recommend getting a single prong belt. But if you like having the 2-prong belt, get the 2-prong belt. But remember, that's another step, and an annoying step, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then there's wrist wraps too. I mean, I used them before. I don't need more. I mean, they're helpful if you get wrist pain. I like the new ones. I think are shorter, but I have what were those slingshot ones? The gangsta wraps. Gangsta wraps.
Yeah,
I like them. They used to make them in camo. I haven't looked on their web. I haven't bought anything from Mark Bell in years, but I liked the gangsta wraps because they were long and then they had a little bit of stiffness, but they were still flexible.
Yep.
I used the Titan Gold before that, and those were real stiff, but not real flex. I needed a little bit more flex than that. So, that's something else you can play with later on as your bench press gets heavy. Typically, if you're benching, squatting over body weight, and, deadlifting double, that's when all this other stuff might matter,
Yeah, and it's really this stuff is that we're talking about now. It's just for a more comfortable ride. It's not going to make a huge difference per se, but it does make the lift feel better or feel more secure. So, that means something for sure. It'll make you execute better if you're,
Yeah, but you're absolutely not allowed to squat out of a fucking monolift. That's just unacceptable.
Yeah. Walk out your squats, people.
Walk out your squat. You can bench with an adjustable monolift because ideally you want to remove humans from the equation. So, everybody universally supports this, but you don't squat out of a monolift. You have to walk it out. You walk out your damn squats. Do not squat out of a monolift. But I almost forgot the damn deadlift jack. You should definitely get one of those.
Oh, the deadlift jack. Yeah. That's a good one. So, I don't have a deadlift jack right now, but I have had a full-size deadlift jack in the past, and it's pretty sweet.
It's really awesome.
Sweet.
I mean, it has a big footprint. That's the complaint I always hear. But, it's just... It's so easy. Literally, the thing scoops the bar up, and then you can load the plates on each side and set the bar back down. Now, they have smaller ones to do one side at a time. I'm not going to do that. I'd rather just take up the space. But for some people, space use is more important, so they'll get the smaller one. But it's my favorite piece of equipment in my gym. The second favorite piece, I have two of them actually, and I put them on the large weightlifting platforms. My second favorite piece of equipment in my gym would be the adjustable monolift that I keep going on about.
It's the deadlift jack wins, though.
Deadlift jack wins for sure, because loading and unloading plates when the bar is stuck to the floor, you're going to bend. You're inevitably going to bend in an awkward position, and you're probably putting yourself at risk too when you start loading and unloading it inefficiently like that. A lot of people get away with it. I did. Doesn't mean that it won't happen, but it always felt awkward and sketchy. I always had that in the back of my mind. I'm like,
I think you're just being a pussy there.
Probably. I don't give a fuck, though.
The deadlift jack is sweet. No, it's great. I think loading and unloading the plates is part of the workout, but I agree with you.
It's awkward.
It's a pain. Yeah. Oh, it sucks. It sucks. Yeah, the deadlift jack is sweet. I agree with you.
Hey, I have a loadable Atlas stone at my gym. That's awkward, and I do it.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's not mine. My member brought it in, but at the end of every workout, we all try to do it, and I can get it up just fine. It's 185 pounds, so I'm all for lifting stuff that's awkward. But fuck loading that bar when it's stuck to the floor. I'm not going to do it. I'm done with that. I've been done with that for 10 years, or like 7 years.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you at all. The deadlift jack's really nice. If you're going to get a jack, get the full-size jack. If you just can't fit it in your don't get the mini jacks, right?
I hate them. Rips isn't bad, but I hate them.
Yeah, I've had the little Rogue mini jacks before, and they do what they say just fine, but they're really you got to get it just on the right spot of the bar, and people who are not used to using it often will put it in the wrong spot on the bar, and it doesn't work, and it's not really that convenient. But if you don't have the space for it, if you're really crammed for space, you're probably going to be able to fit a full-size deadlift jack in your gym. So what I would get is it's really cheap. You can get this orange I don't even know what they call it, but on Rogue you can get a little deadlift. It's not a jack. It's sort of like a little rubber wedge, the dead wedge. That's what they call it.
Yeah, and
it'll fit in your little gym bag or whatever, and you basically just roll the inner plate of a deadlift up on top of it, and it gives you enough height to pull it off. That thing's actually pretty useful if you're in a really small space, like when I was in my 10-foot by 10-foot bedroom. That was pretty useful, but yeah, if you're gonna get a jack, then get the full size
and get the Rogue. Great. I've used other brands or garbage.
Okay. Yeah, the Rogues.
I remember I had these two cheap ones at this gym I was at, and the bar would tilt on one side when I'd take the plates off. Oh, God, I fucking hate that. The Rogue one doesn't really do that. You have to have a lot of plates on one side for that to happen. I think we've beaten the hell out of this topic.
Yeah, I think so too. We can nerd out about all sorts of stuff. We love barbells. If you get into this in any depth at all, you're going to have more than one. So, hopefully today...
You're going to find excuses to buy shit.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe we'll do another episode down the road where we talk about sort of our favorites, stuff that people, that may be a little off the beaten path. But this is the basics of what you need and some suggestions of what to look for and some considerations when you're kind of planning your home setup. I'm telling you, the home gym is one of the best things you can possibly do for your training, unless you are very lucky and you've got a great gym like... Santana's gym, unless you just happen to live next to one of those, which not a lot of people do, the home gym is the best thing that you can do. If you think about the logistics of over your life, what are you actually going to do? We've talked about the consistency thing. If you're going to be consistent with your training, your life is going to go through ups and downs of, being busy, being less busy. And if you're having to drive 20 minutes or 30 minutes even to a gym, hell, even if it's just 10 minutes to a public gym, that's going to add up to more sessions missed because you're just not, you're not making it. It's hard. It's one more little barrier for you to go to your training. When you have the home gym, none of that is the case. Right? None of that is the case. It's all there. You never have to wait on your squat rack. There's never some bro curling, 25 pounds in the middle of your squat rack. It's all yours. And you can play whatever music you want.
I may actually move my combo rack to my garage, so I have something to use. The combo rack is what is used for competitions. So mine doesn't get any use at the gym. Neither do the kilo plates, as a matter of fact. So
yeah.
I may start storing this stuff at home so I could just have something to train with and not have to spend more money.
Yeah, right.
I've considered that.
You could be one of those people on Instagram that like posts all of their training in kilos.
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
It's kind of douchey. They're like, oh yeah, I squatted 175 today.
I only need the fourth. I only need the fourth day for upper body, so I don't need. I don't know what I'm going to do there because, man. But yeah, no, a home gym's great. It's even good if you're at a good gym because if you're in a pinch, you can train at home and then go back to the gym. I have people that do that at my gym.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, this might be boring for some of you who, have been doing this a while. For those who just started listening, it could be useful. But this is we thought this was important because occasionally we get people that will list their equipment on their questionnaire when they sign up for training, and 8-pound dumbbells, TRX bands, and treadmill maybe, and that's it. Then I look at this and I'm like, well, I can coach you on exercise.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're trying to change the way your physique looks, you're going to need a little bit more than that. And you could try to do much of what we talked about with other forms of equipment, but you're going to spend more money. It's going to take up more space, and C, you're not going to be able to go very far with it for reasons we explained at the beginning. Dumbbells get too big and awkward and difficult to maneuver into the start position. Kettlebells do the same thing. Machines have a large footprint and are very expensive. In fact, dumbbells, machines, and kettlebells are more expensive than barbell equipment when you do it by the pound in terms of the weights.
Oh yeah.
A barbell, a rack, bench, platform, all that stuff. Like I said, $2,500. That's one machine. A lat pull down is $3,200 at Rogue. That's what I bought for the gym. But you can get them cheaper. But a plate loaded lat pull down is, I think the Rogue one's $3,200. Their leg press is $5,000. I mean, you can go to a cheaper brand and cut these in half, but still you're looking at, okay, let's say you find one for $1,500. Let's say you find a leg press for $2,000, right? You're still over what we just described,
Yeah. Yep.
So if your goal is to build muscle and, get stronger and move better, there's a million reasons that we've went over in previous episodes, including this one, as to why the barbell is probably the best way to do that. But in addition to, it's affordable and you can incrementally load it, for a very long time for reasons we described. So yeah, if you're going to do the home gym thing, you're going to have to spend some money, and this is probably the most economical way to do it, and it's also the most effective way to train. So who doesn't want to get the most bang for their buck, right? It's not spend too much money and get a whole lot of result, right? Isn't that what we want to do? Isn't that the ROI
that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for, and it's worked pretty well. It's worked well for me.
So yeah, enough about that. We'll hop back onto a diet topic next week. I know a lot of people who listen to us want to hear that because, I'm an RD or something, I don't know. I think people care about that. But, we can hop back on that topic next week and, go into some other areas. But I think this was important, for people that are new. And then maybe some people that have been doing this a while may have gotten some ideas from this. Oh, shit, I didn't think like the adjustable monolift,
Right.
A lot of people don't think of that,
I got to get one, man. That's on my list. And my best belt.
Yeah, you need to do that today. All right, well, that concludes this interesting topic of training equipment. Thank you for tuning in to the Weights and Plates podcast. You can find me at weightsandplates.com or at Instagram, _Robert_Santana, or weights _and_plates.
Fantastic. You can find me at Trent at marmaladecream.com. Send me an email if you want to get in touch with me. Otherwise, we will see you in a couple weeks.